I don't know exactly when the loneliness started. Maybe it was gradual, like water dripping slowly until the floorboards rot without you noticing. Or maybe it was that one night 2 weeks after I lost my job when James looked right through me as if I wasn't even there. I was sitting on the couch folding laundry, same spot I always sat, same soft hoodie I wore on days I needed a little extra comfort. The TV was playing some random cooking show on low volume, just enough to fill the silence. I turned to James and asked, would you rather have grilled chicken or pasta tonight? Simple, normal. The kind of question you ask when you're still trying, still believing that small gestures could bridge growing gaps. He didn't even look up from his phone. Whatever's easier for you, he said, smirking. You've got all the time in the world now, right? Something about the way he said it, casual, dismissive, like a jab masked as a joke. It hit me harder than any screaming match could have. I sat there holding a pair of his socks in my hands, feeling smaller than I had in years. My name is Emily, I'm 34, and once upon a time I believed we were solid. Sure, we argued, we got on each other's nerves like any normal couple, but we always said it was us against the world. Team James and Emily. That's what we used to whisper into each other's hair on nights when everything else felt hard. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being us. It became him, navigating his life and me orbiting around it. Losing my job didn't just shake my finances. It rattled the foundation of how I saw myself. 8 years at a tech marketing firm, not glamorous, not life-changing, but it was mine. I built campaigns, I made connections, I had a purpose. When they called me into that beige conference room and handed me the dreaded folder, I walked out feeling gutted, but still hopeful. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe it meant something better was waiting. When I got home, arms full of the cardboard box they made me pack. James gave me a half hug that lasted all of 2 seconds. Maybe this is a sign, he said almost too brightly. You've been coasting for a while. Time to find your real passion. Right. That sentence replayed in my head for weeks like a broken song. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he didn't mean it like that. Maybe he was just stressed. Promotion season at his job was brutal, long hours, endless meetings, late nights that bled into early mornings. But the small things started piling up. When his friends came over, they stayed in the living room, laughing and drinking without ever inviting me to join. You don't want to hear us talk about spreadsheets and quarterly reports? James would say, with a chuckle, shutting the door before I could even answer. When we had dinner with his family, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence, correcting tiny details like they were punchlines in some private joke. I'd be halfway through a story about my old projects, and he'd lean over laughing. You're making it sound way more important than it was, Em. And the worst part, I started believing him. I stopped trying, stopped wearing makeup, stopped sending out resumes. I'd scroll endlessly through job listings, rereading the same postings without applying, whispering to myself, why would they hire someone like me? I felt invisible. Even my reflection looked blurred, like someone slowly erasing the edges of who I used to be. Then came my birthday. It was a Friday. I didn't expect much. James hadn't asked what I wanted, hadn't even mentioned plans. But a tiny, stubborn hope clung to my ribs. Maybe he was planning something. Maybe he remembered the version of us that once existed. At 5:00 p.m., he texted from the kitchen. Get dressed, something nice. We've got dinner reservations. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the message. Heart pounding. Maybe he saw me after all. Maybe deep down he still loved me the way I loved him. I pulled out the black dress I hadn't worn in months, swiped on some mascara with trembling hands, slipped into heels that pinched slightly but made me feel, if only for a moment, like myself again. The restaurant was cozy and warm, lit by golden fairy lights. It smelled like garlic bread and red wine and nostalgia. And waiting there at a long table in the back were faces familiar and not James's parents. My sister Rachel, a few of his work friends, even our neighbor Jenny, who barely said 2 words to me in the hallway. They shouted, "Surprise!" And for a second, my chest ached with something almost like joy. I thought, he remembered? He cared. I thought wrong. James tapped his glass at the head of the table. I waited, breath held ready for the speech that would make everything better. That would tell me he still saw me, still knew me. He raised his glass and said, let's be honest, she's been dead weight since the layoffs. Laughter, not everyone, but enough. His friends chuckled, his dad snorted. Even Jenny leaned over to whisper, grinning like it was harmless. I sat there frozen, the smile dying on my lips, waiting for the punchline that never came. I glanced at Rachel. She gave me an awkward half smile, a silent, don't make it a big deal look, and something inside me cracked. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. The kind of crack that you know will split the whole damn structure eventually, but I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I reached into my purse and wrapped my fingers around my phone, around the secret that had been burning a hole in my heart for days, and for the first time in a very long time, I chose not to protect him anymore. When I tapped play on that voicemail, the entire room seemed to vanish. Hey James, last night was wow. I've never done something that risky before, but the way you kissed me in the elevator, God, I'm still shaking. I hope your wife doesn't suspect anything. Call me when you can. I watched silence fall like a curtain. Forks paused midair. Laughter died in throats. James stared at me like I'd grown a second head. His mom gasped, hand to her mouth. His dad muttered, Jesus Christ. Rachel just sat there pale as a ghost. And James? He didn't say a word, didn't deny it, didn't even blink. So I stood up, I folded my napkin with care, placed it gently on the table, and walked out. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I kept going. I didn't run, didn't cry, didn't scream, but inside I was unraveling because the truth was, I'd found that voicemail 3 days ago. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't some divine moment of fate. I had gone looking. I'd been cleaning out James's home office, trying to stay busy, trying to feel useful. When I found his old Bluetooth headset, I turned it on out of boredom and it synced to my phone. That's when the voicemail appeared. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I listened again. Then again. And on the third replay, my hands started shaking so hard I had to sit down. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, scream his name, demand answers, but something inside me said, wait, just wait, so I waited. And that night, the night he turned my birthday into a joke, he gave me exactly what I needed. The final straw. When I got home, I locked myself in the bedroom and didn't come out. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, replaying the entire dinner like a movie I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't turn it off. Not yet. That was the night I stopped loving him, not because he cheated, not because he lied, but because he looked at me like I was a burden, because he thought I wouldn't leave. Because deep down he assumed I'd stay, no matter what. I opened my laptop at 1:17 a.m., created a folder titled Proof, and started collecting bank statements, calendar entries, photos, text messages. I scrolled through our shared account and found restaurant charges on nights he said he was working late. I started a secret email. I opened a new bank account. I booked a consultation with a divorce attorney. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even try. I just kept building the case, not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. By morning, I had a plan. And James had no idea. He came home like nothing happened. He made coffee, scrolled through his phone, kissed me on the cheek like we were just a normal couple in a normal kitchen. Then he said, "Can we talk?" I looked at him and said, "Of course. But first I have something for you." I pulled a plain manila envelope from the drawer, inside a printed transcript of the voicemail, a photo of Clarissa, a woman I hadn't even known existed, wearing my sunglasses in my car, and a typed letter, not handwritten, not emotional, just clear, clean, and final. I am initiating proceedings to dissolve our marriage. Effective immediately. Per our prenup, infidelity nullifies your right to any shared marital assets. I have consulted legal counsel. Do not contact me. This is over. He stared at it, read it, laughed. You're not serious, he scoffed. It was just a joke at dinner. Come on. You're gonna throw away 7 years over one stupid voicemail? I didn't flinch. No, I said. I'm throwing away 7 years because you stopped respecting me a long time ago. The voicemail just confirmed what I already knew. And then came the insult he thought would break me. You've been unemployed for 2 months. You're barely holding it together. I smiled. I was barely holding it together when I still cared what you thought. And just like that, I picked up my bag and walked out. He didn't follow. I moved in with Rachel that night. She didn't ask questions. She just cleared out her guest room and handed me a pair of sweatpants. That first week, I barely left the bed. I felt numb, like I'd been hollowed out and filled with static. But at least I wasn't pretending anymore. At least I wasn't disappearing in my own home. The thing about hitting bottom is, sometimes you don't realize you were falling until you stop. The morning after I left James, I woke up in Rachel's guest room to the sound of birds. Not traffic, not a buzzing phone, not James' alarm blaring 3 snoozes past, just birds, and for some reason, I cried. Not the messy, dramatic kind of crying. It was quiet, soft, almost peaceful, like my body finally understood I was somewhere safe. I didn't tell Rachel everything right away, just said James and I were taking space. She didn't press. She simply brewed 2 mugs of coffee and turned on Gilmore Girls like we were teenagers again. But a few nights later, it all came pouring out. We were sitting at our kitchen table at 2 a.m., halfway through a pint of mint chocolate chip. I don't remember what triggered it. Maybe it was the way Lorelai called Rory her whole world. But suddenly I was sobbing, words tumbling out of me faster than I could catch them. The voicemail. The dinner. The envelope, all of it. Rachel didn't interrupt. She didn't scold me for staying too long or call me stupid for missing the signs. When I finished, she just said, "About time," and for the first time in weeks. I laughed. That's when the shift began. Not overnight, not dramatic, but steady, like fog lifting. I started running again, just around the block at first. Lungs burning, legs heavy. But it felt good to move, to sweat, to feel my heart beating for reasons other than panic. I opened my laptop, but not to doom scroll job listings. I dusted off my resume, updated my LinkedIn, messaged old colleagues. One responded right away, then another, then a freelance offer, then two. And before I knew it, I had a full-time remote position again in the same industry that had laid me off. But it didn't feel like going backward. It felt like walking into the same room with my head held higher. James tried contacting me relentlessly, calls, emails, texts from random numbers. At first, I ignored them, then I blocked them, then I started saving them just in case. Because some part of me knew he wasn't done. One rainy evening, he even showed up at Rachel's. I watched from the kitchen window as he stood on the porch in a hoodie drenched and pathetic like some bad rom-com cliche. Rachel answered the door, arms crossed. "She's not here," she said simply, and shut it in his face. I was in sweatpants, eating leftover pizza, watching Stranger Things. And for once, I didn't feel the need to perform sadness or strength. I just was. He sent one final message that night. "You're really just gonna throw us away over her?" I didn't reply, but I did forward it along with the voicemail and the Instagram photo to Clarissa. Found her professional email through her design portfolio. No subject line, no message, just the facts, she replied an hour later. "Wow, thanks for the heads up. He told me you were separated." 2 days later, her Instagram was wiped clean. No more photos in my car, no more mirror selfies wearing his hoodie. Just a new bio that said, "Resetting." I didn't feel triumphant, just finished, and that was enough. 3 months passed. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment a few towns over. Nothing fancy, but it had sunlight and hardwood floors and enough space for me and my plants. My new team respected me. My ideas were heard. I felt valuable again, not because someone told me I was, but because I could feel it in the work. Rachel signed me up for a pottery class as a joke. I almost canceled, but I went, and I loved it. There's something healing about shaping clay with your bare hands, something grounding about watching something fragile become strong. One Saturday morning, I was in Target messy bun hoodie comparing dish soaps when I heard someone say my name. I turned, it was James. He looked awful, unshaven, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. "Hey," he said as if we were casual acquaintances. "Hi." I replied, neutral flat. He gave me a once-over. "You look good," he said too. Rehearsed. "Thanks," I said, tossing lavender soap into my cart. Then I turned to go. "Wait," he said. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. Not because I missed him, but because part of me wanted to see what version of him would show up this time. He stumbled through an apology, told me he'd been stressed, that he'd felt insecure when I lost my job, that I had made him feel small, not on purpose, but by existing. "You didn't handle it at all," I said. "You turned my birthday into a joke. You humiliated me." He nodded. "I miss you," he said, but it didn't hit the way he thought it would. Those words, "I miss you," used to be my lifeline. Now they were just empty air. I said, "I don't hate you, but I don't pity you either." "What you did, it broke something in me." My phone buzzed. A text from my boss. "You still good to lead the pitch." I smiled, looked up and said, "Some of us are busy rebuilding," and I walked away. 3 days after I saw James in Target, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name and his handwriting. Inside a flash drive and a note scribbled in black ink. "If you're going to ruin me, you should know what else you're holding." I froze. That drive sat on my counter all day. I made coffee, cleaned the kitchen, did laundry I didn't need to do. But every time I passed it, my stomach tightened like it was ticking. Finally, at 11 p.m., I dimmed the lights, plugged it in, and held my breath. One file, a video titled, "For Emily, no password, no explanation." Just a timestamp from 2 nights earlier, the same night we ran into each other. The screen flickered. There he was, James, at his desk, dark circles under his eyes, a half-empty bottle behind him. His voice cracked when he started talking. "I know you probably don't want to hear anything from me," he said, rubbing his face. And you don't have to respond. I need to say this somewhere. Maybe so I stopped lying to myself. I watched in silence. He talked about how he'd mocked my job, how he'd belittled me working from home, how deep down he'd always been jealous of how people respected me, how I lit up a room, how I didn't need to step on others to feel tall. He confessed that the voicemail, Clarissa, wasn't the first time, that it started months before I lost my job, that he kept doing it because it made him feel powerful when everything else in his life felt small. I didn't pause, I didn't cry, but my jaw clenched as he said it. When you lost your job and you looked at me like I was your safe place, I used that I made you feel like a burden because I knew you'd stay. Then he held up a small leather-bound book, my old journal, the one I thought I lost years ago, the one with dreams scribbled on tear-stained pages. He looked directly into the camera. You wrote about building your own brand, a space where women didn't have to ask permission to lead. And I buried that woman. I hope you find her again, and I hope you let her run. The screen went black. I sat there in silence, hands trembling on my laptop. Not because of guilt, not anger, not even heartbreak. It was something else, Clarity. The next morning, I opened a blank document, typed 2 words at the top. Blueprint. It was the name of the brand I dreamed of years ago, a space for bold women in business. A place I never built because I got too comfortable shrinking. That video wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't closure either. It was a mirror. One that showed me exactly how far I'd let myself fade in the name of love, comfort, marriage. But I wasn't that woman anymore. And just as I was beginning to move forward, Clarissa emailed me. No subject, just Clarissa Dawson. I hesitated before opening it, expecting bitterness or worse, pity. But it wasn't that. It was long, careful, honest. Hi, Emily. You don't really know me, but I owe you an apology. A big one. I knew about you, not everything, but enough. James told me your marriage was basically over. That you were cold, that you didn't believe in him. He made it sound like you were roommates, out of obligation, and I believed him because I was lonely and he made me feel seen. But 2 days after your birthday dinner, he came to my place. Drunk rambling, saying you embarrassed him, that you'd ruined his life. And then he said, she won't leave, she can't, I made sure of that. That's when I realized who he really was and what he was doing to you. Clarissa had ended it that night, but before she left, she found something. A folder labeled Plan B. Inside were printed screenshots of my social media notes from our bank account, my resume, budget breakdowns, even my family's names with comments like, use this if she pushes for spousal support. She scanned everything and attached it to the email. At the bottom, she wrote, I'm sorry, I really am. I hope this helps you take back your story, and it did. I forwarded the email to my lawyer the next morning. When we brought that folder into court, James's lawyer immediately asked for a recess. 2 weeks later, he came to the settlement table a completely different man. No smugness, no speeches, just silence. I walked away with the apartment, the car, the remaining joint savings, and every last piece of myself, and for the first time in years. I felt whole. 6 months. That's how long it's been since the last court hearing. Since the papers were signed, since I walked out of that building and didn't look back, I launched Blueprint last month, my own branding consultancy for women-led businesses. It started with a journal entry. Now it's a website, a client roster, a full calendar. 3 clients turned into 6. Rachel cried when I showed her the site. Then she posted a TikTok about it, just a simple video of me working in a sunny corner of my new apartment. 90,000 views. And suddenly, Blueprint wasn't just mine. It belonged to the women who messaged me saying, this made me feel like I could start again too. Rachel's officially my part-time assistant now. She makes me laugh every day. Reminds me that healing doesn't have to be lonely, and still insists on late-night Gilmore Girls marathons when I forget to rest. My new place isn't fancy, but it has big windows, creaky hardwood floors, and just enough space for my succulents and coffee mugs. It smells like lavender and ambition. Sometimes I sit at the window in the early mornings, coffee in hand, soft sunlight filtering through the curtains, and I think about her, the woman I used to be, the one who folded laundry in silence while her husband scrolled his phone, the one who asked if he wanted chicken or pasta and got a smirk instead of kindness. And I don't hate her. I want to wrap her in a blanket and whisper, you were never dead weight, you were just tired. As for James, last, I heard he left the company he once bragged about, something about disagreements with upper management. Now he's consulting freelance alone. No team, no marriage, no more carefully crafted image. He tried to reach out one more time, sent a short email. Hope you're well. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to say. Clarissa and I never spoke again. Her email was the last thread in a tangled web that finally came undone. She deleted all her social media, moved cities, started fresh. And part of me hopes she's finding peace too. It's strange closure. People talk about it like it's a door slamming shut. But for me, it was more like a window slowly opening, letting in air, light, possibility. I don't wake up every day feeling strong. Some mornings I still flinch when I hear a certain tone of voice. I still hesitate before trusting someone new, but I no longer confuse survival with love. And that alone is everything I've learned to celebrate the quiet victories. Finishing a project, hanging a new plant, laughing until my stomach hurts. Running 3 miles without stopping, I even signed up for a solo trip next spring. Spain, a dream I put on hold for years because he didn't like to travel. Now I'm building a life I don't need permission to enjoy. The other day, I opened that same journal James had found, the one with the first sketches of Blueprint. At the very back, I found a scribbled sentence I barely remembered writing. One day I will stop asking to be chosen and start choosing myself. I traced those words with my finger and whispered, "You did it." So if you're listening to this and you're stuck, if you're tiptoeing around someone who makes you feel invisible, if you're questioning your worth because they can't see it, please hear me. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are becoming. And the moment you decide to stop apologizing for taking up space, the whole damn world shifts. If you were me, what would you have done?